My last shift was a night shift on intensive care. It felt empty. It was almost like you were part of a movie. It wasn't you that was walking down that corridor. It just felt very alien, it felt different. I put my coat on, took my bag, took my name sticker off my drawer, and I was like, it's like I'm erasing my existence. And then I opened the door into a very dark night and just left. And it was, it was surreal.
Your career in the NHS had come to an end?
Yes, my career in the NHS has come to an end.
Dr. Ola Abbas is an experienced consultant, originally from Iraq, and she's worked in the NHS for the last 10 years. But in December, she resigned.
That's University of Baghdad. I'm not tall enough to tilt it correctly.
Yeah.
Then I did my 3 years internal medicine training. I did my membership of the Royal Colleges, and I did membership of Royal Colleges of Glasgow. Then I did my faculty of intensive care. Then I did my acute medicine speciality certificate.
Wow. I've never met someone with so many qualifications.
I'm well decorated as a consultant.
You really are.
I mean, you don't go through all of that wanting to resign.
But if the NHS had been a good place to work for you, being the place that you thought it would be, you would still be in it today?
Yes. Yes. I've worked so hard to get to where I am. Surely there has to be another way around this. But there wasn't. God knows I tried to figure it out. There wasn't. It was just what was available wasn't enough, and I just didn't get what I needed to keep on giving to the system and also living my life being happy and healthy.
The NHS is facing the greatest workforce crisis in its 74-year history. A staffing shortage that's creating a serious risk to patient safety.
So here we are at the hospital where you're currently working.
Yeah, I do most of my shifts here in A&E.
This is Alessia Waller, a junior doctor working in the NHS, but she wants out.
It can be easy to forget that you're in a world-class tertiary centre and just feel like you're in the trenches.
There's no doubt the NHS is in a deep crisis. You see it firsthand. You are not willing to put yourself through that crisis any longer.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. This is my journal, and this is the 19th of June. The lady with cavitating lung lesion was still going yesterday, gasping with her head thrown back and mouth agape. She was alone in a side room, drowning in air. She is dying, and I'm the only one to witness it. I wish I could just give myself a hug.
In her first 9 months of working in a hospital, Alessia says she was burnt out, signed off for a month.
Burnout, to me, feels like not knowing why you're doing what you're doing anymore and not loving it and actually resenting the people that you're coming face to face with every day. I just hated going to work. I hated being at work. I didn't feel like I was doing my job well anymore. I was just disconnected and disillusioned with everything.
What does it tell us about the system, the NHS, that you needed to step out?
I think it shows that the system is not fit for purpose and that it is past breaking point to the point where the people that work within it are now at breaking point. The NHS, and everyone who works in the NHS knows this and says this, it's like the worst kept secret. You just feel like a cog in a machine, but the machine is falling apart.
In their first 2 years of training, junior doctors go from placement to placement every 4 months. New ID passes, new logins, new people, new departments.
That's complicated by the fact that the NHS is still using these old Windows computers that take about 10 minutes to turn on and log in. You know, you may not get your logins for the first 2 weeks, but you turn up on the ward round, the consultant's annoyed because he's like, why haven't you got the patient's blood results up? And you're like, well, I haven't got login for the blood result system. We're made to feel that we're not worth the kind of the space, the security, the IT, the correct pay on the correct day, and it is so demoralizing, and it makes doctors feel so undervalued. And I think that contributes to burnout, because you're like, why am I breaking my back when I can't even do the basics?
The Department for Health and Social Care says there are record numbers of doctors working in the NHS, but that doesn't tell the full story. A record number are resigning too. 3,229 doctors resigned from the NHS in England last year. The number who left because they wanted a better work-life balance has doubled over the past decade to 341 last year. And the number of doctors leaving has accelerated rapidly since the pandemic. Last year, almost 13,000 doctors in the UK gave up their licence. That's up by 9% on the year before.
The NHS is a crossroads. With the right investment, with the right commitment, actually it has a very bright future, because the staff are desperate to make this work, but we need to retain, recruit, and we need to stop the driving away of the workforce. They're feeling undervalued, and what they've seen is a sequence of below inflation pay rises. So they've seen their pay in relative terms fall by about 26% since 2008. You know, they're not worth a quarter less than they were in 2008. I can tell you what it feels like to be on the receiving end of a government that appears not to be funding the NHS.
Well, so what does that tell us then, in your view, about the government's attitude towards the current NHS pressures that we're facing?
This government refuses to acknowledge that there is a crisis in the NHS. And by only offering sticking plasters to fix it, the situation will only get worse.
One solution to solving the staff shortage is to train more doctors, but that is easier said than done. The government caps medical student places. In England, 7,500 students got a place this year. Labour says it would double that if it came to power, taxing high earners to pay for it.
Okay, come on in, guys. All right, we're going to be working with Sim Man today.
Kate, Lily and John are second-year medical students here at Newcastle University. Today they're learning clinical skills, which they'll be expected to put into practice once they enter the NHS.
Kate, so your next patient, Stephen, has just come in to have his bloods taken. Are you all right doing that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I want to find out how these doctors of tomorrow feel about the NHS of today.
It's almost quite exciting because that was the end goal. That was what you'd always wanted to be. It will be scary, but it would be scary regardless of what's going on at the minute. But I think for medical students at least, it's important to focus on what we've got in front of us right now.
Of course it worries me. I mean, you read books, you read articles, you can't avoid it.
Are you nervous about your journey through this?
Of course I'm nervous, but I'm more excited than nervous.
If you could talk to your medical student self now about embarking on medicine, what would you be saying to them?
Don't do it. If it's your calling, go for it. Nobody's going to be able to talk you out of it, and I'm not here to talk anyone out of it. But know what you're getting into.
For Ola, a consultant in both critical care and acute medicine, COVID was the last straw.
It was so traumatising having to see what we saw during that pandemic, and for people to think that we can come out and carry on as it was, it was just unbelievable.
NHS England data shows a gaping hole in doctor rotas. The NHS currently has 9,000 vacancies that remain unfilled. Alessia now looks likely to add to that. She's planning to move to the United States to pursue her dream of becoming a surgeon.
The NHS can no longer offer me the training that I need or want. I don't feel valued, I don't feel supported, and I think I might have a better chance somewhere else. Doctors are looking around at the environment that we're working in and going, this is no longer worth it. We have been sold a lot of bollocks for a long time.
Junior doctors have now voted in favour of strike action, which means they'll join nurses and ambulance staff in a walkout, which will place intense pressure on the NHS.
They are not doing this because they want to. They are doing this because they are not being listened to.
The Department for Health and Social Care told us that supporting and retaining NHS staff is a key priority, and £6.6 billion of extra money is being spent in the next 2 years. They say vacancies are increasing because services are expanding to tackle waiting lists post-COVID.
We are short-staffed across all disciplines, across all specialties. And it is alarming when you have someone who's been so dedicated for the job for so long, but being forced to leave because they just can't stay in that job anymore. It's a massive system failure.